It's 89.1 WYBF, John the Ninja, and today we are blessed to be speaking to the 2014 Blues Music Award winner Danielle Nicole. Let me tell you a little bit about Miss Nicole. She was performing at a young age. She was doing tap, jazz, ballet lessons, even learned the saxophone. Her mother, who was musically talented, taught her to sing. At the age of 16, she joined her father's band, found out that's exactly what she wanted to do. She wanted to perform musically and spent the years honing her craft. She is a great blues musician. She ended up actually joining her brothers Nick and Chris and becoming a band called Trampled that started out of Philadelphia, and as of 2013 album Badlands debuted at #1 on the Billboard's blues charts. After 13 years, the band called it quits, and Danielle considered to keep going, thankfully, because she has released her self-titled debut Wolf Den that actually has reached #2 in the Billboard's blues charts. Performing tonight at Knucklehead's Gospel Lounge in Kansas City, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Danielle Nicole. Miss Nicole, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. What an intro.
So how has the tour been going for you thus far?
It's been great. It's always a continual learning experience, since I've been fronting my own band and, taking on all of the responsibility. I've really learned a lot about the industry, kind of just hit the ground running. So it's been great that we've been keeping really busy. We've made some great friends and seen some old ones, just covered really a lot of the country over the last year.
Speaking of hitting the ground running, I read in an interview that you said you were your own tour manager, that you were in charge of everything. Is that still the case? It sounds like it is. Like you're still in charge of paying everyone, making sure all the arrangements are ready to go, and then you go out and then you perform on stage as the leading front woman too?
Yeah, I do. I do all of the advancing right now. So I'm calling the venue. Well, my manager helps me out a lot. I can't say that I do it alone. But, when I'm on the road, I'm driving, loading gear, checking into the hotels, making sure the guys get fed, and then doing the set list and getting up on stage and then fronting the band too. And then we pack it up and, I load gear. I'm an active member of the band as well as the hammer too, I guess.
And I got to give it to you because you've been touring for over 20 years now. That's quite the remarkable feat. I also read your mother was a singer and also your grandmother was a singer. I was wondering, what is your grandmother Evelyn's story as far as her being a band singer?
My grandmother died when my mother was 16 of breast cancer. I never got to meet her. I only know her through the stories of my mother. From what I know of what my mom says is that she was just always singing in the house. I'm not really sure how she got into big band. I'm sure it was probably starting out singing in church. And then I'm sure she probably moved on from there. Unfortunately, I'm not sure exactly how she got her start. From what my mom says, that she just absolutely loved singing, was just singing all day and all night. And there's a photograph of her sitting on the side of the bandstand because they all had their podiums with the initials of the band on the front. And she's sitting there in this beautiful satin gown and just a bunch of dudes on the side of the band. And, I sit back and I imagine what it must have been like for her to sing. Wish I would have gotten to know a little bit more about her and gotten to meet her.
From a young age, you were very active. You did dancing, you learned musicianship, your mother taught you to sing, you played saxophone. I was wondering, why was that? Did your parents force you to do all those things, or was it just you wanted to do it?
They didn't force anything on us. They really were very supportive once they knew what we wanted to do, but they really let us come into it in our own, like all three of us. I've always just loved to perform, so I think it was just kind of natural for me being a girl to get into dance, and I pursued it very heavily through high school, and I went to an arts high school and majored in dance, and I really thought that was going to be my path for a while, but then as I started performing with my parents and really just got into blues, my dad heard me singing down in the basement during one of their rehearsals, and he was like, wait a minute. He's like, he asked me if I wanted to come start sitting in at the jams, and they were doing a Blues in Schools installment out in North Kansas City, and I got up to sing, and after I did that, I was on like a real stage in front of people, and being able to sing, it kind of clicked. I was like, yeah, this is going to be it. But, my mom wanted to make sure that we were all very certain that this is what we wanted to do. She wanted to she wasn't negative by any means, but she's like, this is really hard work. And in reality, this is something that you want to pursue. Music is a very small part of the business aspect of being a full-time musician and having this as a career path, and really wanted to make sure that it was something that we wanted to do. And she realized that we were all very serious about doing it. They were very, very supportive. And, I played with my father up until he got really, really ill in the late 90s, and he couldn't perform anymore. And, I'd like to think that he's proud of me for where we're at and just continuing to push on and spread the legacy of our heritage as the Jopplin family and the generations of music that we've had. And I just want to pass it on to our kids and to the world.
In other interviews, you said you were very musically engrossed. There's not a particular genre you just gravitated to. It was music everywhere, all over the place. There was soul, there was gospel, there was rock. It was a bunch of different types of music that influenced your writing style and how you are as a musician. I was wondering, when you were growing up, was there a certain artist that you pretty much put on a pinnacle? Like, oh, if I could be them, or if I could just do this like them. Is there a certain artist that you have for that?
Growing up, we listened to a lot of Led Zeppelin and Beatles. And the first female artist that I really was introduced to and was exposed to was Janis Jopplin. And I identified with her not only being a rockin' chick, but, a white girl singing the blues. It was raw and it was real. And she didn't care what she looked like. She wasn't there to be an idol or an image or anything. She was just there to sing some blues and sing her soul, And I really loved that. I clung on to that, I think, first. And then as I tried to find out who I was and my place in the musical world. But, I always kept gravitating back to blues, and the Coco Taylor was a huge influence because she was the nitty gritty, man. But Janice obviously was an influence growing up. But Coco Taylor, and then when I found Etta, I was 16 when I found Etta, and it was all over there, It's like, yeah, this is it. But all the while, my mother was there. She really just loved all kinds of music as well. And with my dad's record collection and her love of every genre, thankfully I was able to learn a lot and just gather humongous influences. So, she was the one that was always there for me. But when you talk about, mainstream that people know and could recognize, I would say it started with Janice, Coco Taylor, and then Etta James. And it's been kind of Etta ever since.
And I'm happy that you mentioned Janice and Etta, because when I was going through the reviews, the first time I saw you live, you were doing a show for George Thorogood at the Forum in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I drove all the way from Philly, picked up my father in Delaware, and then we went to the Forum just to see you guys. And I remember I was sitting there, you came out, you started playing, and I was enthralled. I was like, finally, I get to see a female artist that has the soul and the passion for the blues. I was captivated. And all the reviews, when people talk about you live, say the same thing. It's not Janice. It's not even the next best thing. It's the next step. It's better. I'm so happy that you even mentioned that, because I was just like, wow, she's really, really good.
Well, thank you. I've always been likened to Janice. I talked about this with my brother, because we were together for so long. I know that I don't sound like her, but I think that when I get compared or likened to her, I think it's because it takes them back to that feeling they got listening to her. You know what I mean? Because, if you look at us, obviously we don't look alike. We don't really sound that much alike. There are certain times when I'm growling or when it's a real raw moment or something I can understand, but I think it's more just the feeling that they get. And there are some artists that are like, I don't like being compared to Janice or Etta or, and I don't want to be compared because I like myself. And I think it's more of that feeling that you get. And like you were saying just a second ago, it's not that I sound like her. It's just that it's like the evolution of the music, the next step. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Hey. After a few side projects and performing with your father, you moved to Philadelphia where your brother Nick was, and you guys started working on Trampled underfoot. Now, we out here in Philly, we love our own. We always take care of our own. I was wondering what it was like when you were being groomed, because it also says here that while you were in Philadelphia, you had to learn bass, and that kind of blew my mind. I was like, wait, she's so musically talented. She actually knows what all the different words mean, piano, mezzo forte, the different keys. I was wondering what that experience was like trying to pick up the bass. Was it fast for you? Was it quick? And how was the Philadelphia scene?
I loved Philly. Played at the Grape Street a lot. We did the old Grape Street, and then when they moved to the new location, where it is now, we used to play Warm Daddies when it was down by the river, and really awesome scene. But, the bass, it was just a lot of practice. Just like anything is, but just trying to learn how to sing and play bass at the same time, I think it's still an ongoing battle for me because I try to write a cool, funky bass line that I can't sing over it because it's all syncopated. But when I was in Kansas City still, because we, like Nick and I and Chris Chris and I were living in Kansas City, and then we would fly up to Philly and do some shows, and Nick would fly home from Philly, or we'd drive there. And so we were traveling back and forth a lot before we actually started playing full-time in Philly. So I learned from my bass players in Kansas City. I took a few months' worth of lessons just to kind of get familiar with the fretboard and the patterns of different types of grooves and everything. But then, I just kind of sat down, and the constant repetition, and probably was out playing a few months before I should have been out playing. But, you only learn by, one of the quickest ways to learn is by experience.
Definitely. I totally understand what you mean, too, because there's been a lot of different bassists that say it's hard. Tom Araya said the same thing. He's like, yeah, I'm not good at singing and playing at the same time. And I'm like, you got to give it up. It's very difficult if you do it right. Geddy Lee makes it look easy.
Yes. You can't stop for a second and let your mind wander. It can be very detrimental to the groove, I'll tell you that.
So you guys were grinding, and you guys self-released albums, you guys kept going, and then finally Badlands dropped, and like I said, it went to #1 on the blues charts. You also won the International Blues Challenge in '08. When you guys finally started to see success, what was that like for the family?
We were just playing. We were so worried about the shows and worried about filling our calendar that we didn't really bask in any of our successes. No joke, we were playing 230 shows a year for multiple years in a row, and 2-3 shows a day, 7 to 8 shows a week for many years, and just kept plugging and playing. And the only thing that I really noticed at the time was how the venues were starting to fill up. Crowds were getting bigger. And I absolutely loved it because, it just meant that we were not only successful in this business, we were gaining success in the business. Success is a matter of perspective to each individual. But we were progressing, and it felt great, to look out and see people singing the words to songs that I wrote. It was really cool to find the little moments of levity, and we're in the middle of the night, and I'm sitting on a porch in Norway, and I'm like, God, music is what got me here right now. Playing the music and just getting in front of the right people at the right time. There were moments I really was able to appreciate it, but that's always short-lived because you got an 8-hour drive the next day.
So after 13 years, you guys, like you said, were doing multiple tours, going, and the band kind of burned out, and you guys went your separate ways. What was the moment you decided, I want to keep doing this, I want to go out on my own?
Well, it was kind of a long time coming with the split. Like you said, we'd burned ourselves out, not only with each other, but just on the road and just grinding too much and not taking time between tours or anything. We were just always just working, plugging so much. So my brother Chris left at the beginning in January of 2014. He had told us in September, he wanted to essentially just take a break. And, Nick and I, we both had kids, we both have children, we've got families, and we were like, well, we can't just stop playing. So then Chris essentially quit. And we decided, our record was still doing, or we had just released Badlands, and it was doing really well. And we decided that it was too big of a shock to not only our families, but the people out on the road that enjoy our music and come to our shows. We thought that we would be kind of shortchanging them to just up and quit after this album came out. So Nick and I decided to continue without Chris for the year and kind of do a farewell tour, which was basically the whole year of 2014. But meanwhile, as soon as Chris was gone, I started working on my own thing while Trampled Underfoot was still touring. I called my current guitarist in Kansas City, and I was like, hey, this is all pretty hush-hush. Nobody really knows what's going on, but, I'm going to be going out on my own starting 2015, and he's been a pretty hardcore rockin', awesome drummer, young cat throughout the years. And I was like, hey, you want to do some touring with me? And so I kind of started setting up what's going on now. I thought ahead. You got to think at least 8 months in the future is present in the music industry. You got to be thinking a year and a half in advance because these festivals and everything. So I stayed on with the same management team, and it was the same booking agency at the time. I've recently made a switch to a better fit, and so I've just been kind of honing my team and just been on top of my business. Like I said, it's not just a job for me. This is my career. And so I was just, from the get-go, from when I found out that Chris was wanting to leave, I was like, all right, well, now I got to get my next thing. And there's no question for me. It's music. I'm a decently educated individual. I could get a job, know that I could always fall back on something else. But But really, if it's not playing music, it'll be writing it or producing it. I would love to get more into the studio side, but you just got to keep on your business.
Sounds like you have the eye of the tiger. There's the people that know what they want to do, and there's the people that they say they want to do it, and you're just going for it. And it's not like you're going for it blindly. You know what you want to do, you know what you want, you're going after it, and there's no fear of, okay, can I? It's no, let me make it happen, not can it happen.
Oh, yeah. You can't look at it like, I hope this is what happens or this is what I would like to see happen. It's like, what do we do to make this happen? You have to always be problem solving. And that's not how I look at writing my music, but that's how I look at running my business. You got to get your goals and you got to figure out how to make them happen and what to do. And sometimes something just happens overnight and it's about being at the right place at the right time. But that is very rare. Usually you got to work it and you got to find it and you got to make it happen.
So I want to shoot to the album Wolf Den. Tracks include How Are You Gonna Do Me Like That? It also includes You Only Need Me When You're Down, Just Give Me Tonight, etc. As you were going through the transition, you said you were still in the band with your brother. When you were trying to make your own album, what were you trying to do different to change your sound yet keep the same musical styling you had when writing?
When I was writing for Wolf Den, a lot of the songs were already written, and they were tunes that I was kind of preparing for the next Tough record originally, because I'm just always writing. Always want to try new stuff. With Tough, we did the same set for so long, and we did the same songs, and I was like, well, first thing that I want to do definitely different about my band is just play new stuff all the time and sprinkle in new stuff, make it a point to make every show a completely different experience. So a lot of the tunes were already written, and I think that kind of helped have the foundation of my writing still there and have my sound for all the Tough lovers or quote-unquote purists that were like, oh, you'll never be as good on your own as you are with Tough and stuff like that. And it's not that they're haters, but they really love Tough, and they were devastated that the band was just quitting. You guys can't quit. What are any of you guys without Tough? And so I was happy that there were quite a few songs that I'd already written that had that kind of feel. But I think the main difference in this record was working with a different producer, because I worked with Anders Osborne on this record, and I went down to New Orleans to writing sessions with this guy. And so the songs that we wrote, obviously just him being a different producer than I'd worked with before was already going to change the sound and the overall product leaps and bounds. And not to say anything against Ultratone over in L.A., where Trampled Underfoot, where we recorded our last two records. I love Tony Bronigal to the moon and back, but the label really wanted to work at a different environment and get me out of my comfort zone and just work with a different writer. And I was like, okay, let's do that. And obviously that heavily influenced the New Orleans side of the feel and more of the rootsier style of writing as well. Some of the rootsier songs like Waiting on Your Love and You Only Need Me When You're Down. Anders and I wrote those together. And I think you can really tell the outside influences that are different in Wolf Den. But since it has my style, it's hard because you want to sound different and have a new facet of the jewel that is you as an artist, but you want to stay true to yourself. You have to find that fine line between playing something that's out of your element or playing something that's just wrong for you. Because you could step outside of your element and still crush it, but you're just trying to fit a circle into a square just for the sake of saying I can fit into a square. It's not going to come forth as honest. And there were some songs that I had tried to start writing, and I was just like, I'm having a really hard time with it and fighting the song, and it's just because it wasn't what was right for me. And so you have to give in and really, really work it and understand what you're trying to say and where you're coming from. And I think honest intention is always the best, because instead of just trying to fight who you are as an artist, because you can expand and you can progress and you can evolve and you can modernize while still staying true to yourself. And that's the path that I'm on right now.
And it also says that you only had 6 days to record the album.
Yes. We had 6 days.
Was that due to the touring schedule, or was that just the money, or how did that come about that they only gave you 6 days? And were most of the songs already good to go by then?
Oh, yeah. We had to have the songs down for sure. There was very little writing in the studio, and it was mainly due because we had Stanton Moore on drums, and he's in like 18 bands. He's Galactic's founding drummer and playing a lot. It was mainly due to scheduling, because with Anders producing and playing guitar, and then Stanton's schedule, and then my schedule, any artist would like an extra day in the studio, but man, we were able to get it done in 6 days. We just focused on drum tracks the very first day, because Stanton, we only had 3 days with Stanton. We were like, we got to get, when he's done, he's done. You know, we couldn't afford an extra day, even if he had the extra day. We just had to do it. And the engineer, Dan Prothero, out of San Francisco, he was down in New Orleans, and he was just amazing. Like, the end of the 6 days, Anders, Dan, and I, and Shinetop, my piano player, he's all over the record. He was down there, too. You know, we were in the studio for like 13, 14 hours the last 2 days. It was insane. I couldn't, but we got it done, man. We did it.
Well, you guys definitely turned out a masterpiece. But I was wondering if you remembered the writing of Wolf then, and what inspired its creation.
Yeah, I do. You know, it's a few different juke joint type clubs here in Kansas City. And literally, you know, like Knuckleheads and BB's Lawnside, those are like the blues clubs here in Kansas City now. They're both literally right off the railroad tracks. And Knuckleheads is kind of hard to get to, so there's that long and winding path. But there was this juke joint in Kansas City that I used to play when I was growing up, when I was first learning bass, traveling back and forth from Kansas City to Philly, and it was called the Club Paradox. And it was down off of 3rd and Parallel. The venue itself was safe, but the surrounding area was definitely not. Growing up, there was another little place called Amazing Grace's Barbecue off of 3rd and Quindaro down in KCK. And my dad used to take us there for the real late-night jams. And when he had us on the weekends, the jam didn't start till 3 a.m. And I'd be sleeping over on the booth, and then I'd get up and sing and then go back to sleep. They're throwing the juke joint party, and it's just kind of that. It's a lot of mixtures from a lot of my roots growing up in Kansas City is mainly where the Wolf Den, like the visual place of the Wolf Den comes from. A lot of those places, you know, they're pretty seedy joints. So it's definitely a song of experience.
My personal favorite from the album is You Only Need Me When You're Down. Do you remember that writing as well?
Yes, there was this line, and I'd had this line, you only want me when you need me, and you only need me when you're down. I'd had this for years. I'm not kidding. I tried to write this song for the Badlands record. Nothing came to it. I just couldn't figure it out. And I was writing with Anders, and it was during that session, because originally I had thought of it as like a ballad or a slow blues, you know, just kind of a love lament song. And he was just sitting there on the floor, barefoot, you know, we got a couple guitars, and he's just like, huh. And he's like, you only want me when you need me. And he's on the guitar. And I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden he goes down to the D. He's like, you only want me when you need me. You only need me when you're down. And I was like, man, like really starting to envision it as like an upbeat song. And so it was basically, you know, I was just in a bad relationship at the time. And I was just like, man, you know, you only want me when you need me. You only need me when you need something, you know, and it kind of evolved from there. But Anders really put the guitar, the music to it. And then we just ended up writing the verses pretty easily from there. But that was a line, like, I'd been trying to use it for so long, and I couldn't figure it out. And then Anders just comes in within, like, 10 minutes. He's like, this is it. I was like, this is the way it was always supposed to go.
It is a great song. I do enjoy it. The one thing I also noticed is the album was put back, and you released an EP prior to. I was wondering, how did that come about?
Well, you know, all I can really say is that it wasn't a strategic move on my part. I call that quote-unquote label stuff. You know, we recorded the record in September. I think it just kind of took a little longer than everybody was hoping for the whole thing to come together. But my side was ready for a March release. Like, the album was done, and there was no problem with that. But I think that the label really just wanted to give it a bigger push than they would have been able to with 3 months, because, you know, we had to get the artwork and everything together. But they just decided that it would be better to release the EP and end up having kind of a teaser thing, and that kind of shifted momentum on the transition. That shifted that back 6-7 months. But in retrospect, it was good because I was able to get a few of my acoustic songs on there, which I've been doing a lot more acoustic guitar at my shows and kind of integrating that. And my show tonight at Knuckleheads is a solo show, and it's just going to be me and my guitar for like 2 hours. We actually did, we did 14 finished songs in those 6 days. And so we took 2 of them and put them on the EP, so that we didn't have 4 songs from the full length on the EP. I was very, very against that. I was like, if you guys are going to push the record back and we need to do this EP, then there's got to be a maximum of 2 songs that are on the record, you know, and they ended up doing radio edits of those 2 to make them different. And then 2 songs from the New Orleans sessions that aren't on the record. And then I also have my 2 acoustic songs. And as a result, it offers a much wider spectrum of what I can do musically as well. So at the time, I was not for it, but now look, but now it also put the release back. And so, when the album came out, I had recorded it. It had been a year since I had recorded it. So now everything's kind of pushed back. So hopefully I'll be going into the studio at the beginning of next year to release a new album next fall, because I've been writing a ton for that.
And you're just killing all my questions off my sheet right here. The thing you're hitting. Let's shoot over to your live performance. That's The Rave. Like I said, saw you at the Forum, a beautiful venue. You come out, your band's playing, you have this gorgeous set of pipes, and then all of a sudden I noticed something that I'm like, is she in high heels? And these aren't normal high heels. These are very, very high hheels. And I'm like, her feet must be killing her. No wonder she's screaming so loud. I was just wondering...
Oh.
I was wondering, how do you do that? Like, what inspires you to play in high heels? I'm telling everyone listening right now, these high heels are ridiculously high. It's amazing.
They're not that bad. They're not. They're like 5 inches. They're not that big. The Thorogood sets are pretty short. We only had a 35-minute set. I'm comfortable in the shoes. I don't wear really cheap, crappy shoes that hurt. And if they start hurting, then I take them off. I get scorned a lot, especially from women that are like, you're going to ruin your toes. And I was like, well, when they hurt, I'm in a job where I can just take them off. And that could be part of the show, let me get a little more comfortable or whatever. I think the years of dance, I learned how to walk properly on the balls of my feet and to lock in my ankle. Knock on wood, I've never fallen on stage. I've
never
tripped over cables and stuff, but part of the performance. But I'm aware of what I'm doing, and like I said, if my feet start hurting, I take them off. If I'm on a stage where it's really slick, then I take them off. If they're like, you're gonna have to have surgery, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to be okay, because I learned how to walk properly on heels as, when I was tap dancing. I was in high heels tap dancing. To walk and be able to to move back and forth is not a big deal for me.
When you perform, you said that there were so many good songs in the creation of Wolf Den album. I was wondering, with Wolf Den, Trampled Underfoot, was there any particular songs you like to perform live especially? Because when we saw you, the one that seemed to be the one you had the most fun with was when you played Trampled Underfoot by Jopplin.
Yeah, well, that one has always been special, because it's funny, when I was in the band Trampled Underfoot, we never were able to play the song Trampled Underfoot because we didn't have a keyboard player. So when Shinetop joined us the last year in 2014, I was like, we finally get to play this song live. So that was basically making up for the last 12 years of not getting to play it. So that's an especially fun song for me, for sure. There are just really a lot of tunes. One of my favorites with Trampled Underfoot that I loved doing was the song Mary. That was a really cool story. Tony Brongle, my producer with Trampled Underfoot, and I wrote, and I think that was one of my all-time favorites. And the last record that we made together, but it was one of my all-time favorite songs to do with Trampled Underfoot was that. But I've got quite a few now that I really love doing live. We've been closing out the shows lately with A Whole Lot of Love. And that's fun, because our guitarist brings out his theremin. It gets real weird in the middle of the song. But but as far as my originals, Wolf Den is one of my favorites just because it's nitty-gritty. It's got a great groove. And my drummer, Jan-Michael Faircloth, he learned Stanton's part so well. I got to give it to him, because Stanton's not an easy drummer to learn, and he had pretty crunchy drum work that he had to learn. And Brandon, my guitarist, they really embodied Stanton and Anders on the record, and it's really been able to transfer live. But some of the new tunes that'll be on my next record, where I'm not telling which ones they are because...
Oh, come on. Can we get a sneak peek, please? 89.1 exclusive.
Exclusive. Well, we've been doing a song "Burning for You" that's going to be on the next record, and there are two brand new ones that we've been doing called "Save Me" and "It's Our Time." And we'll be doing those on our run coming up.
You've been around a lot of blues greats, and I was just wondering, while out on tour, was there any act that you were supporting or you just happened to meet that initially gravitated to you guys, wanted to take you under your wing, or even somebody in the business that saw something special in you guys and said, hey, I'm going to give you a few pointers, or it was just a joy to be around because you enjoyed them so much?
There were a couple there over the years. The Roger Neighbor, who owned the big club in Kansas City, it was called the Grand Emporium. he's always been a champion, not only for me, but my brothers and my family. He's part owner of the legendary Rhythm and Blues Cruise business. And, he really gave us a good chance to get in front of a lot of people. And he's been a huge supporter over the years. So anytime I get to work with him is the dream. And John Catt, he's another promoter out of Winter Park, Colorado, who works with Blue Star Connection, which brings music to children in life-threatening situations. As far as promoters go, I always adore working with both of those guys. As musicians go, in 2008, when we won the Blues Challenge, Kenny Wayne Shepherd was one of the judges.
Really?
Yeah, we got to meet him, but we've been doing quite a few shows with him, over the years since. And every time he comes to Kansas City to play, he'd have his management reach out to us about we could support the show. And so we were able to do quite a few jams with him. And it was actually my brother Nick had called his father, and his father was the one who got us hooked up with my current management company, which was initially Red Light, but now it's called 7S out of Denver. So he's been a huge helper and supporter as well. Then when we did some touring with George Thorogood, he is a hard-working dude, man, and his crew is amazing. They've been working with him for upwards of 27 years, and that says a lot about you as an artist when you have people that are willing to put up with you for that long. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I don't mean band crew. I mean lighting crew, sound crew. When I got to meet him, he was just really interested in what we were doing as an artist. He wasn't wanting to tell us how cool he is. He wanted to find out about us and where we were at. Probably my biggest influence lately that was just really kind of take you under his wing kind of thing. Just really cool that he goes out and he just rocks hard out. He goes on stage with a big smile, comes off drenched, he's got nothing, and he does 6 days a week. And they just tour. It's incredible to watch. And
I love the fact that you brought George up, because when he's out there, he was so full of himself, and it's not in a bad way. It was funny because he's going, you know what? I've been waiting how many years to get here? I'm gonna enjoy every last minute of it.
Oh yeah.
And if you don't know, if you don't know what he's done and been through, then you're kind of sitting there wow, he's really full of himself, but he's not. Once again, I'm telling you, he's sitting there, he's talking oh, the destroyers are out, I'm good to go. I'm having a great time. I'm awesome. But he didn't hesitate to throw your name out there a couple of times. I took a real interest in how many times he mentioned you and your talent in the band. But once again, another question for you. What are your overall goals for 2016 and also your career?
My goals for 2016, we're already a quarter of the way through it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's April.
Oh, you mean the year, wow. Not the goals. I was oh, you're almost done your goals.
No. Really, my goals for 2016 are really just getting really comfortable with my band, honing our live performance, getting some solid rehearsals together, and just get some really great songs for this new record. I'm going to be I've been playing bass for North Mississippi All-Stars a little bit lately, and I'm maybe doing some more touring with them throughout the year. The goals are really just to spread awareness of the Danielle Nicole Band and just get my live show together for the next record. When 2017 comes around, just nail this recording. And I really want to collaborate a lot more than I used to. Back in the day was tough because, like I said, when we were playing over 200 shows a year, you don't have time to do writing sessions and go on vacations and really just experience life and be, as it is in the music industry already, you don't have paid time off. I mean, you can't call in sick unless you're really, my goals are really to be able to find that balance between home life and touring, because there are so many venues and festivals nowadays that you don't have to be out for 3-4 months at a time. You don't have to do that. I'm a mother of 2. So while I'm running my own business and writing and driving and touring and all this, I have 2 children as well. And, I have a huge team that helps me do everything. I don't have nannies and stuff like that. I am a mama. I am 100% mom. And then, business comes as well. And it's hard finding that difference, because when you're at home, I'm very grateful to be at home with my children. They come on the road with me too. When I'm at home, I'm not making any money for their college. So I have this work thing stuck in my head. And so my goal is to really find that balance to where I can be a stable mother. And not to say I'm unstable by any means, but you know what I mean? Just be able to find that home life and that work life. We're right there. And I really feel the next couple of years are just going to be great.
And that's fantastic, because people underestimate the toll touring has on people.
it's beautiful. I love being able to play music for a living. Oh my gosh, everybody loves music. Who doesn't love music? But it is insanely difficult work to tour and run a business.
Very happy for you that you're somewhere in the middle because that's difficult.
I am somewhere in the middle. That's great. Bills are paid, and and I get to spend time with my children. Of course I would love to have a number one hit, and I would love to never have to worry about money again. But success isn't being rich to me. Like I said earlier, it's all success is relative to your perception, and as long as I'm progressing, that's successful to me.
I know you got to go. I only got one more question for you right here. So, with all the years of experience, everything you've ever done, usually someone gets a piece of advice that comes to mind first when they hear it. I was wondering, what's the best piece of advice you've been given or have given that comes to mind right now for you?
Well, I have a couple. Always write. Never stop writing. Always create, I guess, basically. Just take the time to learn how to create. And my number 2 piece of advice is keep your mouth shut.
Well, I do one of those.
Well, no, I mean, be aware of what you're saying. Be aware of your surroundings. 9 times out of 10, the problems that are created in arguments are because you're not thinking about what you're saying. I run into this all the time because I'm a pretty hot-headed person, and I realize that, a lot of arguments can be avoided if you just think about what you want to say. And I'm talking with club owners, with musicians, with fellow band members. Somebody messes up a song, instead of just being like, hey, you messed that up or whatever, just stop, think about how to speak to somebody. You just stop and think, I guess, is more than keep your mouth shut. Just stop and think. It's easy to get in the moment.
Well, Miss Nicole, thank you very much. You can see her in PA May 31st of this year, so be on the lookout on the calendar. All right, people? Miss Nicole, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to come back out east.
Before you go, could we get an ID, please?
Hi, this is Danielle Nicole, and you're listening to John the Ninja on 89.1 WYBF.